Hey guys, a second auto vengeance build, but this time it's a cold auto vengeance. Previous one was lighting and it did reach pretty high numbers, but it just did not feel good and sometimes it just had way too many conditions. So this build is using pretty much same principles, still Slayer, still using Storm Secret Ring and Herald of Thunder to auto proc vengeance, but this is cold and has way fewer conditions, and because as the saying goes, vengeance is best served cold. So this is like really true because you just freeze everything and then, well, the enemies cannot really do anything to you and you don't need to worry about defenses as much. So you have more ways of, I guess, improving your damage, and you can just focus more on damage, and more damage means enemies get, even stronger enemies get permanently frozen. And this is just shredding everything. It's just so satisfying running through map. Just boom, big AoE. And Atziri Disfavour, yes, Atziri Disfavour I think is pretty much mandatory. You can make it work without Atziri Disfavour, but the area that you get from Atziri Disfavour is just crazy. And Atziri Disfavour, I am using some alt quality gems that give me almost 100% more damage. This is the Divergent Pulverize. Just straight up 99% more melee area damage. And also alt quality Cast on Crit gives 50% more attack damage. So you just get crazy amount of scaling with the Atziri Disfavour. So this is not purely cold. I'm actually using a Heatshiver as well. So I do want to make sure that I can freeze enemies for a very long time, or at least until I hit again with Vengeance. The biggest problem with Vengeance is that, and I wish that we changed it, the Vengeance is not 100% proc rate. When you get hit, you have a chance to proc Vengeance, which is by default 30% chance to trigger when hit without the quality. You could get it to 40% with the normal quality, but I am using Anomalous Vengeance to reduce the cooldown to be able to proc it more often, which does help quite a bit when going between enemy packs, because you just blast once, during the cooldown you get to the next enemy pack, blast again. But it's really annoying, and it got me killed a couple times, more than a couple times. You get into certain pacing, you kind of intuitively, internally know when the next Vengeance is gonna proc, and then you run next to enemy pack expecting the Vengeance to proc and freeze everything, and then it just doesn't. And it sometimes can happen, like you stand and wait for like 2 seconds. It's rare that it happens like that, but it can happen. You stand and wait and it just doesn't proc, and the enemies just are free to kill you essentially. So that's kind of one drawback. It does have pretty low HP, but it is pretty tanky, or at least it can survive some hits. I didn't do any Uber bosses. I don't really care about Uber bosses. It's just frustrating. Everything non-Uber related except Atziri you can pretty much do without any problems. I did Cirrus, normal Cirrus. I did Guardians. Guardians die in a couple of hits. Pretty satisfying seeing that. Sanctum is also really cool. You leap slam. I'm actually using Leap Slam as a main ability to proc Shock. I'm gonna talk about that a bit later, but you just need for your Herald of Thunder to be able to reach our enemies, and then it just auto-procs Vengeance. So sometimes you just leap into a room and then boom, all the guards die immediately. And it's so cool to see. And you can just freeze those guards and then just run around waiting for another Vengeance. And yeah, if you can just freeze everything except things that literally cannot be fully slowed down, you can take your time defeating those enemies. But even against like Phoenix, Minotaur, Guardians like that, they cannot fully be slowed down, but they still can be frozen. The freeze can still be applied, which means you're still gonna be getting all the damage from the Heatshiver. Now, in order to increase the freeze duration, I am also using Temporal Chain. You don't need the Helmet Enchantment, although I did get it, but you also need like the Freeze Mastery, or should I say Cold Mastery, for the increased freeze duration. That helps a lot. And in general, increasing the non-damaging element effect is not going to affect the freeze, but it will affect the other parts of the build, which is pretty important. And on top of that, I am self-casting Temporal Chain and Elemental Weakness because I have Balance of Terror. And the Balance of Terror is actually, to my surprise, was pretty cheap. The increased cooldown recovery rate if you have used a Temporal Chain, which affects Vengeance procs, but it does not affect Herald of Thunder procs, because Herald of Thunder is based on proc rate rather than cooldown. And then also the other part is gain a lot of physical damage as random elemental damage if you have cast an Elemental Weakness in the past 10 seconds. Since I am using multi-elements, this works really well. I am also using Elemental Penetration Gem because I'm using multi-elements, and I don't really even have exposure. I simply ran out of sockets. That's why I'm using Leap Slam as a main ability. I do still need to be able to proc the shock in order to even automate the Herald of Thunder. If you're thinking how expensive this build is, Atziri Disfavour went up in price, now it's like 10 divines, but the other items are not really that expensive. I did get like really good gloves because I wanted the full conversion. Well, not entirely full. I'm still around 90% conversion into cold, but instead of gloves with big conversion, you could just use the Hatred Watcher's Eye and get more conversion that way. But yeah, I don't really have much room for gems because 2 of my gems are Forbidden Jewels from the Gladiator to get the Painforged for the double damage of counter skills, and then Balance of Terror, and then I am using Brutal Restrain just to get more damage and yeah, pretty much just for the damage, which could be replaced. Now, the tricky part is, this is non-crit build, which limits the scaling. So I actually try to work in precise technique. That's why my life pool kind of has to be below 5.2 thousand. And it is pretty difficult to squeeze in precise technique. Normally you can get a lot of accuracy on gloves, amulet, rings, right? And then jewels. So the jewels, I don't really have much room. Gloves, I crafted a really good top tier accuracy roll. One ring is pretty much blocked because I need Storm Secret. The amulet is pretty much blocked. The helmet as well can also roll accuracy, is also blocked. So I don't really have many places to get accuracy, pretty much gloves and one ring. So I do have synthesized ring with global increased accuracy. Getting intelligence is also important because the amulet increases all attribute requirements by a bit, and you do want intelligence for high level elemental weakness, for high level Herald of Thunder. The vortex level doesn't really matter all that much, but with higher level vortex you can like proc it more frequently. And you do want Vortex because Vortex is linked with Bone Chill. Normally you would also link Vortex with Bone Chill and Unbound Ailments, but I simply ran out of sockets and I had to add Precision to get enough accuracy. If I could get like a really good relic with accuracy, I could change a couple of things, but now I just have increased AoE relic. Because this is non-crit and I don't need to worry about accuracy or worry about actually rolling critical, all I pretty much have to worry is that I drop Vortex next to an enemy. I used my flask because I sometimes forget to use them, but I pretty much just use my flask against the bigger bosses. And then the biggest condition is, I guess, Scorched Ground, which in my case only lasts for 2 seconds. If I can freeze enemies, it's very easy. I just run past them, leave the Scorched Ground, but usually they don't even survive that long. Another thing that is a bit more conditional is the Intimidate on hit, which isn't a big part of the damage. It's 15% chance. You can get that on gloves, like I said, if you modify the gloves a bit more. And I did not even include rage calculation in path of building because it's hitting very infrequent or hitting like only once per second, so you're not really gonna ramp up rage that much during mapping or bossing. And because Herald of Thunder keeps hitting you, I believe almost 6 times per second, it's very easy to generate frenzy charges. You just get body armor with chance to gain frenzy charge on a hit, so it hits you because the ring hits you when the Herald of Thunder hits an enemy, does damage to you, hits you, and you can just generate frenzy charges very quickly. And on top of that, I also got Inexorable, 25% chance to gain endurance charge when you are hit, so that also ramps up endurance charges pretty quickly. And I do have 4 endurance charges. So 4 endurance charges, Fortify, some armor, not that much, like almost 6k armor depending on what kind of body armor you can get. And I'm also getting 10% reduced damage taken while you are leeching. And I'm always leeching because of Slayer's Overleech. So I do have some mitigation, but not that much. But also Temp Chain and then Strong Chill. Slayer's Culling Strike, the 20% Culling Strike also works after the hit. So if the big chunky hit from Vengeance hits the enemies and brings it into 20% remaining life, it will just cull it in that single hit. So let me go over items, support gems, skills, and passive skill tree. Vengeance does not, I think, have to be anomalous. You could just go with like 2120 normal Vengeance. You would have a higher chance to proc it when hit, but going between enemies back, it would be a bit slower, but it's not a big deal. There are still quite a lot of map mods that you want to avoid, like anything that affects CDR is gonna feel bad. Cannot do LA reflex, cannot do physical reflex. Cannot leech is a bit annoying, like no region is also a bit annoying, but those can be doable. So Vengeance is linked to anomalous melee physical damage, Now, turns out, I personally did not test this, but it does feel like it does work. Melee strike range does affect radius of vengeance. Although, based on its wording, only weapon range should, but it seems that it does affect it. That's why I'm using anomalous melee physical, because inside Atziri Disfavour it gives +5 to melee strike range, and that does increase the radius quite a bit. Diversion Pulverize is just straight up the best damage support for this, because you don't care about attack speed. Diversion Pulverize I believe is like 4 divines, so that's not cheap. Yeah, 4 divines. Anomalous cast on critical strike gives 50% more attack damage, just straight up. Elemental damage from attacks, as you can see, I don't even have quality on this. Even level 5 awakened elemental damage from attacks only gives me like 200k extra more damage per hit, which is very minuscule. And then elemental penetration is pretty important because, well, you are doing cold, a bit of lighting, and a lot of fire damage. I have Hatred, I have Herald of Thunder, currently level 21, but if you don't have enough intelligence, you may have to keep it at like level 12 or something like that. Same goes for elemental weakness. Blood and Sand does give more area damage. I pretty much just always keep it in the blood stance, but if you're lacking AoE, you can just switch the stances if you don't forget to do that. And then Herald of Ice as high level as possible, because it's just cool. Probably don't necessarily need Herald of Ice, but I mean, it's just really cool seeing those explosions. Now the Leaf Slam does not need to be 6 linked. Bone Shatter would work better, but like I just don't have sockets, and I don't really need Bone Shatter. I'm not gonna be hitting with Bone Shatter myself. I'm gonna let the Herald of Thunder do the work for me. So Leaf Slam is just linked with Fist of War because it just looks cool and does give a lot of damage. Remember, you just need to shock once and that's it. Then elemental damage for attacks again, faster attacks to make it feel smoother, life tap because you don't have any mana you can spend, and then physical damage to lighting does not need to be anomalous, just to get a bit more lighting damage, because you still need the high lighting damage enough in order to even proc shock against like really tough targets. Then on the left click I got Vortex with life tap. Pretty much everything has to be life tap. So Vortex, life tap, Bone Chill. Bone Chill increases the cold damage enemy take. Precision as well separately. If you are running precise technique, if you are not running precise technique, it would be much easier to build and you would lose like a bit more than 1 million damage depending on your setup. But it would be much easier to make it work. You wouldn't need a ring with a bunch of accuracy. You wouldn't need precision. You could just get a ring with a lot of like elemental damage to attacks or cold damage, and the damage would be lower, but it would be much easier. Then I got Val Ancestral Warchief because it just straight up gives me 32% more melee damage, or just a normal one which does give 18% more melee damage, but if it dies you lose that, so it's not very reliable. It also has to be life tap. I'm also using elemental weakness in the same setup with temporal chain linked to life tap as well. So these you kind of need to just cast once every 10 seconds. Previously I was using a bit different boots. If you can get enough resistances and get enough intelligence, that's great. If not, don't worry too much, just use lower level elemental weakness and Herald of Thunder. For the flask, Taste of Hate and Sulfur Flask, I pretty much just use it against the bosses, but I did use this, and Kindling Orbs to be able to use them multiple times essentially. This I can use 3 times. This is with the perfect roll, which means I have almost 30-second uptime on my Sulfur Flask and what is this? More than that on my Taste of Hate. So against the bosses that's plenty of time to do all the damage to defeat them. Silver Flask just for extra speed, automated, and then Quicksilver is not ideal. You would probably want extra like movement speed. I just didn't have it. For the Pantheon, which is pretty important, there are some altar mods which will reflect your ailments back to you, so you want to be immune to freeze, so that's great, you are immune to freeze. Reduce effect of chill, you're still gonna get chill for 30% if you reflect your chill to yourself because you are getting a lot of increased chill effect. That's how it works, it seems. And then I picked up this so that I cannot be blinded, and reduce effect of shock in case I get shocked, so the damage spikiness is not as bad. Now as for the passive tree, Slayer, you don't go for the crit, you go for the other things. I believe I picked up Headsman first, and then I picked up the Impact, and then Brutal Fervor. But you can early on pick up the Painforged jewels, Forbidden Jewels, Painforged. They are not expensive, and early on it's not really worth it pretty much until you put on Atziri Disfavour. It's not really worth going with the Vengeance. But Storm Secret Ring is level 56, So you can essentially start doing it at 56, but AoE is not gonna be very big. So I went to pick up AoE here, but since melee strike range does affect radius, I'm not actually sure which is better now. Is it better to pick up AoE here, or is it better to find melee strike range somewhere else? But yeah, that's what I'm doing in here. I went for the Fortify Mastery in here. Usually I go around here because then I can get more fortification stacks, but going through here I can save a couple points, or like, well, literally just 1 point, but I do lose like 4 fortification stacks, I believe, which doesn't really matter because I'm not supposed to get hit. Also, if you're not doing like accuracy stacking, you may not want to go through here and may just pick up this one and then spend points somewhere else. But I'm picking up some accuracy here, so it's a bit important for me. Now this brutal restraint is here just to give me 5% physical damage as extra cold on this one. This one, alchemy genius, does not matter. Elemental damage on this one, I got more elemental damage on this one, and that is all. So you just read up, I believe, 4 nodes that give me damage. A very important thing as I learned recently, nearby enemies have 50% reduced life regeneration rate. You're gonna want that. I posted a video with fighting Drogs. I have never fought a more tankier Drogs. It was in the second phase, so it was taking reduced damage, but it was also sitting on the consecrated ground, while Maven was also casting all sorts of buffs and heals, and with even 50 million DPS, the boss was still slowly dying. Like, that was crazy. So you definitely want something like that. I had no sockets for the frost bomb, and I did not really want to change. I mean, you can get this Pantheon, but you would need to upgrade that. Enemies you've hit recently have 50% reduced life regeneration rate. If you combine that with this, but like, you can't really prepare for the fight. I mean, I guess you could prepare for the fight if you read the map mods, unlike me. So yeah, this is level 93. I'm going for the last life node. You can pick a couple points here and there that suit your needs more, but you do want penetration as much as possible. I went for this penetration. You kind of have to get freeze duration, and going here also gives more penetration, and you do want 2 cold masteries. So you want 1 cold mastery for the cold conversion and then 1 for the freeze duration. Those are very important. The freeze duration is very important, especially if you are not using temporal chain. And then increased effect of non-damaging ailments will essentially buff the bone chill, which is gonna increase the damage as well. Do not neglect things like this. 8% increased damage for each aura or hell affecting you, since this build is running 4 auras, 2 auras and 2 heralds. So that's quite a bit of damage. You can, that's another thing. At level 95 I would also pick up auras from your skills have 10% increased effect on you. So that would also buff my damage quite a bit. I cannot promise you that I would not do another Atziri Disfavour build this league. There's a chance, there's always a chance, I guess. But if you don't know, the Sanctum League has been extended by a lot. I did expect that it's going to be extended, but I did not expect that it's going to be extended by almost a month. So the next league is scheduled to begin somewhere in early April rather than March. So we still got almost 2 months left. So yeah, send your build ideas in the comments below. So for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.